start the recording and start the session with the bell here. Welcome everybody to United in Strengths. This is your community where our tagline is breathe, remember, connect. Breathe meaning to just pause during the challenges of our day, the joys of our day, and to just remember to breathe, to center ourselves and ground ourselves. And second, we remember. We remember that we have 24 qualities that we can turn to, 24 parts of our personality that we can turn to for coping, for improving the joy of our life. And then third, connect, that this is our opportunity right here to connect with people around the world. And it's also a reminder of just taking that message of connect back to our families, back to our neighborhoods and our friends, so that we can continue the practice of physical distancing, but not social distancing, that we keep connecting that way. And so I'm just very delighted then for this particular session, we have a wonderful guest, my friend and colleague, Jenny Brennan. And so I'm just going to introduce Jenny and then turn it over to her for today. So Jenny is an internationally recognized practitioner in applying positive psychology and the founder of Ardent Wellbeing. And she earned her master's in applied positive psychology from the main university in the world that offers those master's in applied positive psychology programs, which is, of course, the University of Pennsylvania. She got that in 2012. Hard to believe it's been that long ago, Jenny. She went on to have actually, I would describe as a critical role at IPA. And so many of you know, we've talked about IPA. It's the International Positive Psychology Association, the world's biggest positive psychology organization. And she did all sorts of things as a key liaison and connector, I would describe her as at IPA, including developing educational programming. And she was instrumental, actually, in helping myself and Itai to pave the way for us to create the spirituality meaning division. So she also sits with me on the IPA's Council of Advisors. And her programming and her work focuses on helping individuals to boost their well-being and to really leverage their angst, their challenges, their stressors for calm, purposeful action, which is perfect for today's session. And also perfect for today's session, she created the short online program that I'd recommend everyone to check out called Election Zen. So here we have Jenny, who's gonna really help us to speak to stress and coping and self-care. And so this is in the context of the United States election. And we know that there's a lot more tension and stress for people on all sides of the various issues. So that's one piece of this big topic. But then another piece of this is we know that well, at least I should say, I know from talking to so many people in various countries that this US election is actually stressing them out too. It's not just a US centric type of issue here, that there's many eyes, many concerns, much stress as we look upon this election. So I think people relate on that level too. And then finally, I think this is a session for absolutely every person listening, whether you're listening live or with this recording here, because Jenny's going to be talking about key perennial topics around self-compassion and building strengths and taking care of ourselves at challenging and stressful times. So with all of that, thank you very much, Jenny, for being here. And I know you have some slides and so much to share, and we're going to engage the chat a little bit later as well. So welcome, Jenny. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today. I really appreciate the offer, Ryan, and thank you all for making time in your day to come and connect and learn together and share your knowledge as well. I want to start just by really acknowledging that it is such a remarkable time right now with everything going on with COVID and the fight for racial equity and the US election. For sure, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of sense of feeling out of control. And I just really want to acknowledge that fear and angst and stress are completely valid feelings and emotions in response to what is happening. I also want to acknowledge that some of us might be in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. There are definitely people who there's a disparity in financial means and ways to respond and cope. And I'm also aware of my own privilege as a white woman, that for some people, this very much is a matter of life and death. And their feelings of stress are very valid. And I just wanted to start by recognizing that. And I wanted to say that my wish for today is that we can all build some hope by focusing on how we can tap into our own innate qualities and strengths to help cope and connect and support the things that we care about. So thank you. So stress is what arises when something we care about is at stake. And I love this quote from health psychologist Kelly McGonigal, because I think it really hits the nail on the head. Stress is often accompanied by a belief that there is a threat. This can be a threat to ourselves. This can be a threat to our finances, to something we care about, like our family or our health, or even a threat to a value that we hold dear. And the other belief that accompanies stress is often that not only is there a threat, but that we can't handle the threat. We often see stress accompanied by feelings of sadness and anger as well, which also have underlying beliefs of the feelings that we've lost something or that we've been harmed. And I think it's important to understand these underlying beliefs that contribute to our feelings and our experiences, because when we're aware of them, then we can challenge them and we can check them for accuracy and we can choose the best response going forward. This awareness is very much a part of emotional management, which is a crucial skill for coping. And so one of the ways that we can increase this awareness is by practicing mindfulness. So many of you already are aware, one definition of mindfulness is that it is when we observe our feelings and emotions without judgment. So when I say I am so stressed, I can feel it in my body. But when I say I am noticing that I am so stressed, I'm putting a little bit of space between myself and that feeling, and it opens up room for me to consider the source of the stress, maybe look at how valid it is, and to contemplate responses. It loosens stress's grip on me. And so we can practice mindfulness, and there's a couple of ways that I do it. I've actually conditioned myself throughout the course of the election that every time I hear a candidate's name on the news, I take that as a moment to pause, to take a few breaths, and to think about the fact that I'm stressed and really dig deeper to see what are the values that I feel are threatened right now, and then what can I do, what action can I take to support and protect those values. So some things that one of the ways to help you tap into mindfulness is to start doing body scans and pay attention to your body. So if you notice yourself throughout the day with like clenched shoulders, that can be a sign that you're stressed, and that's an opportunity to pause. I also have heard of people setting a timer on their phone, maybe 2 or 3 alarms throughout the day that are scheduled opportunities for them to pause and practice the skill of mindfulness. Because again, when we're mindful, we are more aware of the situation and we're better able to assess the situation and to choose a response to that stress that's healthy and helpful. Because back to Dr. McGonigal, we have more response options to stress than we may be aware of. In her book, The Upside of Stress, she talks about the fact that while many people know the fight or flight or freeze response to stress, there are some others that we can draw upon. We can practice the rise to the challenge response, which is where we marshal our resources and our strengths, and we are able to take some positive action. There's the bigger than self response, where we connect with others and we seek that valuable social support that can be so helpful for coping and resilience. And there's the what can I learn response. This could be an option for us to use our thinking strengths and our wisdom strengths to be able to say, how might I grow from this situation for next time? And so what happens is when we're confronted with stress and the corresponding belief that says there is a threat that I can't handle, we can say, actually, I'm reframing this. This stress is a signal that there's something that I care about. And I'm going to use my strengths to choose one of these options here to take some proactive action. Character strengths offer such a great opportunity for us to respond to adversity. And I know, Ryan, you've talked about their buffering effect and their reappraisal effect. I think character strengths are so helpful when we respond to adversity because there are natural ways of thinking and feeling. And so they come out of us naturally. It's not something that we have to expend additional or significant effort to conjure. And not only that, but they energize us and they make us feel engaged and they satisfy our psychological needs for feelings of competency. They do a lot of things. They help us experience the benefits of feeling like we're living our lives in alignment with our values. And so when you are approaching a problem, right, that you need to overcome and you're using your strengths, I feel that you would naturally be more inclined to choose approaches to problem solving and approaches to managing stress that are more healthy and effective because you're using the best parts of yourself. So Kelly McGonigal, again, might agree with that. And I love this quote that stress can awaken our human strengths. And that's something that I really want to impress upon everyone also, because when we live during periods of stress and tension, it's an opportunity for us to grow, build upon our strengths, develop new strengths. And so let's have a conversation about how we might do that. Here are the 24 character strengths, and these are arranged under 6 virtues. So if we take a look, we can see how, for instance, the courage strengths might be very helpful in the rise to the challenge stress response, right? To help us marshal our resources and have the bravery and the persistence to move forward. Or we can see how the justice and the humanities strengths can help us, our love, kindness, social intelligence, teamwork, can help us connect with people and marshal the bigger than self stress response where we seek social support. We can see how I mentioned earlier, how the wisdom strengths can help us potentially to learn something and grow from the source of stress. And I think that temperance and transcendence offer some excellent support as well. So for temperance, my goodness, well, first of all, self-regulation is a crucial part of mindfulness, which we've discussed is so important for emotional management. But I think that temperance can also be beneficial, especially in really divisive times, to help potentially avoid or de-escalate conflict with others. And transcendence is one of my favorite. My top strength is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And what it has done, it allows you to tap into something bigger than yourself, which helps you to feel a more common sense of humanity with others. And it also gives you the benefits of experiencing that come with experiencing positive emotion and purpose in your life. So I'd love to pause here and throw it back to you, Ryan, and open it up and see how might you use some of your strengths and how are you using your strengths during this time?
Excellent. Yeah, so amazing, so practical. Thanks so much, Jenny, so far. We're going to open up the chat. And so the main question you would offer people right now, would it be name one of your strengths that you're using recently to cope with the racial injustice, election stress.
Sure, whatever source of stress.
Any of the above?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if everyone could, and I see people are putting in the strengths already, if you could please also add how you're using the strength. Mm-hmm. So to name whatever particular strength you're using, and you could say what it's for, if it's during election stress or whatever, but then how are you using hope or gratitude or kindness. That would be great. Shanti got to start with gratitude, and maybe you can add how you're using that, Shanti. Marla says self-regulation by controlling my responses to people.
Big one.
Shanti says it's gratitude, and every day that I think about how much I have, and I have more than what I would want. Angela says perspective, to recognize the good always coexists with the challenges. So really good balanced thinking there. Rowena says love, her number one strength, using it to connect with compassion and understanding when others have different views from hers. Eleanor says, I feel like stress often hijacks my creativity, imagining all kinds of outlandish ways that things could go wrong. So I'm working to be more mindful, using my creativity to envision all the things that could go right. And Jenny, you can feel free to jump in at any point.
Can I say something about that? Is I love the Marty Seligman put something out there. It's an article about how to prevent yourself from catastrophizing, right? And so our creativity can definitely lead us down that worst case scenario path. And the practice challenges you to use that exact same level of that you take it to on the negative side, on the positive side. What's the absolute best case scenario? And be really outlandish with it. And what it does is it shows you that we're so quick to accept really extreme negative occurrences. But when we flip it and try to do something that's really positive, it seems comical, right? Like that the best case scenario is going to happen to us. And so what we find is that usually what occurs is somewhere in between. So that could be a helpful really thing for that woman to practice.
Yeah, and we're getting in, we might be getting in all 24 strengths at some point here, which is great, and great data. Maybe you'll want to probably see this chat dialogue later too, Jenny, but perspective for election stress and kindness to be present with others, a love of learning to learn how to deal with a narcissistic neighbor who thrives on conflict, kindness to be present to others, love to give people that little bit extra at this time of need, judgment to work on being open to all sides of the story, curiosity, trying to understand what's happening. So many great examples here too.
Great. So I have been working on various issues of social justice and social change for about 2 decades. And when I graduated from MAPP, what I wanted to look at in my capstone was what are the innate benefits and strengths and capacities that people who do this kind of work can develop for greater well-being. And so I landed really in my research on self-compassion. And so what I've been doing is using self-compassion a lot during this time. And I think self-compassion is a combination of a bunch of strengths. I think it's kindness. I think it's love. I definitely think it's perspective. And what I found in my research is something that I've also found on my own, and that is that the self-compassion positively correlates with life satisfaction, but all measures of PERMA, so positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. It also correlates with perspective taking, and also, interestingly, it's negatively correlated with burnout and the tendency to believe in non-zero-sum games. So in other words, if you're more self-compassionate, your well-being is not only enhanced, but your other focused concerns and your ability to find compromise are potentially impacted. Further research is needed, but I thought that was a really interesting initial finding.
Yeah, linked with so many things. So where should we go from here? Should we
I'm curious, Ryan, what you have found that's most helpful for you. And I also wanted to maybe get a little bit of information. You had mentioned the spirituality and meaning division at IPA, because obviously that's an important topic. Is that one of your top strengths?
When the VIA survey shifted in defining spirituality more in a bit of a secular way, then mine would be actually higher in that sense. When it's defined more in pure religiousness terms, then it's typically a bottom strength for people, and it wouldn't be as high for me. But when it's defined as pursuing the sacred in life and finding meaning and purpose in life, then certainly. And I think that's so, to your question, so linked with, at this time, of how are we finding meaning in the COVID-19 times? How are we finding meaning during these struggles? What are we getting out of it? And so I certainly have, it's certainly inspired me to kind of enhance my mindfulness, my connection with nature, my desire to do more spiritual or mindfulness retreats than I typically do, to find meaning in the difficulties, and as you were saying as well, kind of rising to the challenges and learning from the difficulties. So I think it's a powerful strength under transcendence there.
Yeah. I think I've run into friends who almost feel hesitant to try to conjure positive emotion. They're like, people are suffering. It's selfish for me to want to experience positive emotion. And it's an opportunity for me to say, no, really, this feeling of transcendence is the positive emotions you experience, like you said, when you go out in nature. Using Barbara Fredrickson's work, they really can help to broaden our perspective and help us to build our resources, which can be so crucial right now for coping.
Yes. Yeah. And what's great is kind of what you're eliciting out of the group here is just the wide range of possibilities here, that, there's all 24 strengths are probably noted here at some point, and then powerful examples of what people are doing to cope. And so I think the key is to just take action in some way, and I love the 3 examples you gave. I think that's going to be a huge highlight for a lot of people, of reframing our stress response, to quote you here, as either the rise to the challenge response, the bigger than self response, or the what can I learn response. I mean, because a lot of times, researchers will limit it just to meaning, or just to the learning and growth mindset stuff. But to have all 3 of those angles for all the people listening here, and all the people who then influence other people in their life, their families, their kids, their clients, their students, their employees, it's a huge abundance of resources. And I think you're right, and the strengths that you connected with each of them, be a range of possibilities, but certainly some would, be more easy to tap into than others. So yeah, it's great.
For me, the thing that has really been crucial is that I feel like some of the values and the things that are really important to me are being threatened right now in the climate. And for me, one thing that has given me a sense of comfort and a sense of control when I really feel out of control or don't have that much control is to make sure that I'm using my strengths in alignment with the things that I value, and particularly with the purpose of supporting the things I value. So for instance, if I'm worried about environmental protections, what I can do is use my strengths to figure out how can I support that issue, advance that issue, and bring it forward in a way that's meaningful. And I call it showing love to my values, because when you think something's if it's threatened, you want to protect it, right? You want to show it love. And it makes me feel a little bit of comfort, because the reality is that after this election, nobody can take away from me my ability or my desire to support the things I care about. And just that fact that I won't lose that there are things I can do, it brings me comfort. And I want to share with everyone an exercise that I offer in Election Zen as well, to help people go through a process of aligning their strengths with their values if they want to try and practice the same. It's kind of a combination of a strengths exercise and a values affirmation exercise. So Ryan, if we want, I can go through this a little bit slowly. And if people want to take out a pen and paper and go through it now, maybe we can do that. Okay.
Yeah, perfect time. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I kept the strengths up there for us. So using our strengths to support what we care about. So the first step is to identify and explore our strengths. I'm guessing that a percentage of the people on the call are aware of their strengths, or aware that they can take a free VIA assessment on viacharacter.org
Yes, yeah,
I've
but
also,
definitely a majority. Uh-huh.
excellent. And I've also included them to the right. So exploring strengths is really a great way to get acquainted with them and endorse which ones we really value and agree with. That's part of step 1 as well. Step 2, what do you care most about in life? So for me, I care about the health of myself and my family and others. I care about the planet. I care about opportunity. I care about knowledge and learning. I obviously care about my family. And so just kind of jot down and spend some time thinking about, what do we really care about?
And I know some people might want to even close their eyes during some of this. Some of you might be typing or writing it down. Some might be thinking. Feel free to close your eyes and pause and really be present to yourself as you go through these steps that Jenny's offering here.
So the next step is, and you can spend more time on this as well afterwards. The next step is to identify 1 to 2 political issues that you're going to prioritize based on your values. And the reason we ask for 1 to 2 is not to negate the importance of the others. It's simply because we don't want to become overwhelmed to the point of inaction. And by focusing on these 2, we can say these are going to be what we show the most care and love and energy and effort towards. We're still going to care about the others, but we're also just going to manage ourselves and our energy.
And Jenny, can you give a couple examples of what someone might frame as a political issue?
Yeah, so for me, it's environmental protection. That's what I'm going to vote based on. That's what I'm going to put together. Social justice, those are 2 incredibly important issues for me. And I kept them broad. You can keep them broad. You can keep them, you can make them more narrow, whatever really works for you. For some people, it might be healthcare and protecting pre-existing condition coverage. For others, it might be other things. I mean, it just depends on what you value. But I want to also mention that if politics is not necessarily the thing that's causing you the most stress right now, maybe it's COVID, maybe it's homeschooling. So the reason this is a different color is it lets us kind of swap that out and say, what 1 to 2 issues related to homeschooling my child am I going to focus the most on, and to be able to carve that out for yourself.
Great examples and great way to kind of widen the reach.
Yeah. And then finally, we put it all together and we say, how are we going to use our strengths to support the things we value the most? And you can choose which of what you care about, or the political issues, however you want to do it, to meld that together. So how can you use some of the strengths that most resonate with you to support the things you care about? And you can return to this exercise as much as you want. And as new stressors come into your life, you can swap out step 3, right? And you can help make this work for you. And writing it down and taking the time to really sit with it, you know, in a meditative, mindful fashion can be very beneficial. If you're looking for some ideas for how you can use your strengths in a number of ways, I want to tell you about a resource. And my colleagues, Robert McGrath and Taya Rashid, just recently posted, and this is free. So it's a journal article that's available to everyone. It's online, and we'll probably link to it, Ryan, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
They offer over 100 suggestions for how you can use your character strengths to enhance your well-being. And theirs is specific to COVID, but they offer certain suggestions that are also very relevant if you're concerned about racial justice or the election or divisiveness as well. So here are just a few quick examples. You can use your sense of teamwork and honesty and fairness to participate in an online campaign or an activity to raise awareness about an issue, to help raise funds for an issue perhaps, and to help raise awareness about an issue that's of importance to you. I really like this one. You can use your appreciation of beauty and excellence, creativity, and love of learning to perhaps explore artists that maybe you were never aware of Black or Indigenous or diverse ancestry who fought for justice and use their creativity in their work and their artistic work. And that could be a way to really appreciate what others have done and learn about their experiences at the same time. You can also potentially volunteer at a nonprofit. I know that a lot of nonprofits right now have opportunities to support virtually since we're still distanced, texting, calling, emailing, helping with various campaigns. So that is also an option to use your kindness, your creativity, and your love to help support things that you care about. I'll also give a plug, since I used to work at the American Red Cross, that right now is a very important time for blood donations. As you lead up into the holidays and the weather gets colder, and particularly with all of the stress of COVID and the distancing that's had to occur, they're in need of blood and volunteers at this moment. So if you're in the United States, check out the American Red Cross. And I will just share quickly one little thing that I did to give you an example. So as I mentioned, environmental protection is important to me. I feel that it's threatened. What I was able to do recently is create a virtual nature walk. So what I did is I took all the photos that I've taken in New England where I live on my various hikes, and I put them together, and I made a short 4-minute video that gave me an opportunity to share that beautiful nature with people, but also to talk a little bit about the scientific connection between nature exposure and well-being. There's also a scientific connection between nature exposure and cooperation with others. So behavioral connections as well, which I find fascinating. And there's some evidence that shows that if nature is far from you or hard to access, you can even experience, albeit a smaller effect, but an effect nonetheless, virtually. Virtual exposure to nature has an effect. And so what I did was create this this video and offer it to a local conservation organization pro bono to be able to use to help engage their members and, you know, engage their supporters, their donors, their membership, all of that during social distancing. So that's one example of how to use our strengths. So does anyone have any other ideas, Ryan?
Yeah, and real quick, to get that video, would we just type in a virtual nature walk, or is it Getting Election Zen? What's the best way to
It's in Election Zen. It's also on my YouTube channel, and I'm happy to make it available after this if people are interested.
Great. When I just, I didn't know you were going to be talking about nature stuff. That's an exciting surprise for me as well, because that's VIA just launched maybe 3 weeks ago a study on character strengths and nature connectedness, actually. So very much along with what you're talking about, and that's a bigger. There's maybe 4 different character strengths research camps in different places in the world that are now looking at the direct connection between character strengths and positive environmental behaviors and connecting with planet Earth and so on. So Yeah. So, and we're planning some other things via in this space. So definitely we'll have to connect more on that, and anybody else that's particularly interested in that kind of research as well. But yeah, so right at this point, Jenny, should we, one is we could see if anyone wants to share their responses to the activity that you offered, the 4-step. And then also, if you're ready for it, we could also invite people to ask questions too.
Sure.
Is this the right time to kind of offer both? Or was there more that you were going to share at this point?
I think it's however you'd like to approach this. One of the things we were considering was how could we use our strengths that we sort of touched on, but not 100%, but how can we leverage our strengths to kind of communicate and connect with others and build trust and whatnot. And so maybe we can just take that into the conversation and the Q&A.
Sounds great. Yeah, sounds great. So people can raise their hand, just click on participants and raise your hand, and you can raise your hand and share your response to the activity from earlier, or what Jenny was just showing in terms of how you use your character strengths to connect. Or if you have a question for Jenny, you can post them in the chat room, but we'd like to hear from you live as well. So let's pause for a moment and see.
And while we're waiting for questions or people to put something on the chat, we did have a question. Could you just go through the 3 reframes again?
Sure. So the first one is the, let me pull up my notes real quick. The rise to the challenge response, right? So this is a resilience response where we marshal our resources and our strengths, and we decide that we're going to use our strengths to take action. Then the second is the bigger than self response. And this is all explained way better than I can do it in Kelly McGonigal's book, The Upside of Stress. And so I definitely recommend checking her out. The bigger than self response is where we reach out for social support to others. Maybe we join a group of people who are all engaged in the same goals, but it's interactive. It's about connection. And the third is the what can I learn response. So this is where we evaluate and appraise the situation to see what can we learn and incorporate for the next time we experience similar stresses.
Thank you, Jenny.
Beautiful. The bigger than self response has a lot to do with the research around perspective taking, and the what can I learn response has a lot to do with the science around growth mindset. The rise to the challenge response has a lot to do with phasic strengths, which Peterson and Seligman in the original VIA classification put forth in 2004, and there hasn't been much research on phasic strengths, but we know, practically speaking, practitioners around the world love the concept of phasic strengths. How do I use certain strengths to handle difficulties and really rise up right when the situation calls for it, using my bravery or my perseverance or prudence. So yeah, that's really 3 top-notch practical applications here. And no hands up yet, so hopefully we'll see some brave souls to raise their hand. And maybe while we see if anyone's going to raise their hand to ask questions or offer their story or examples. Jenny, before we started, we were you and I and Ruth were talking, preparing a little bit more. And you shared a really awesome part of your journey and your story. And it's related to all of this. We were talking about strengths of the mind and strengths of the heart. So strengths that are more logical, more thinking oriented versus strengths that are more feeling, intuition, body based. Many people if they get the VIA Total 24 report, will recognize we have a whole graph that goes into strengths of the mind and heart. And so that's some resource for people. But your story was quite strong on making a shift in your life from mind strengths to heart strengths. And so I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that?
I don't mind at all. Well, I was telling Ryan that when I first took the VIA, it was when I was entering the program at UPenn in 2012. And the vast majority of my strengths were thinking strengths, right? And they were very much about creativity and things that would be considered, I guess, mind strengths. And then shortly after the program concluded, I experienced a very severe heartbreak that changed the course of my life. And in the subsequent years, working for IPA, building my business, falling in love again. I took the strengths test again just recently this year, and I found that the strengths of love and gratitude went up to my top 5. So a lot of the heart strengths actually that had really expanded and helped me in the previous years now are considered signature strengths.
I love that. Yeah. Let's see. So I have a question. I'm wondering, with the different people, Jenny, that you've been reaching out with elections and kind of all your other work around stress at this difficult time, which element of that program do you think people are resonating most with?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that people are resonating very much with the strengths use and what I talked about today, the reframing, because they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that, right? Like I didn't realize there were more options available. And I think one of the things that's the most challenging about this time with the just the uncertainty that's going on is whenever we can establish a sense of control using our strengths and using the way we're going to approach stress and taking more ownership of it and assuming more control, that's going to help. That's going to help with stress. And I think that gratitude and experiencing moments of awe are things that we also teach people how to do in the program. And I think that that's been really helpful, again, because gratitude really impacts your health, your physical, your mental health in many, many ways. And it helps to direct your attention, particularly in times when we're surrounded by negativity. And we know we all have the negativity bias, right? Which is this evolutionary, wonderful part of our brain that makes us tend to respond to and consider the negative and feel it more strongly than we do positive. That makes it even more important for us to spend the effort and the time to generate the positive. And the other thing I love about gratitude is that there's a witness effect, right? So even showing people that they're like witnessing other people expressing gratitude and experiencing gratitude can help us feel good. So I think awe and gratitude. The other thing we cover is acts of kindness. That also has a witnessing effect. If we see people that are experiencing kindness or doing kindness for others, we experience some positive benefits from just seeing that. So I found that those are really all very helpful as well. But I'm happy to answer anyone's questions even after this. I have my email on the slides, jenny@ardentwellbeing.com. And please feel free to reach out if you want to discuss further.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. All great research-based strategies from Jenny there. And Kathleen Roth is agreeing, saying, wow, moments of awe, exclamation point. What a concept to bring to the forefront. It is one of those things that we often don't think of, but to bring that awe, that appreciation of beauty and excellence strength that you and I and Ruth share in each of our top 5s. It's a wonderful strength to be bringing forth right now, and awe is a big part of it. Yeah. And Ruth's put in the chat, just so everyone knows who maybe isn't looking at the chat, the article that Jenny was referencing by Tayab and Bob McGrath, and then Jenny's email as well. You can see that in the chat.
The other thing I want to mention while I have you before we close is that there's been a lot of talk recently when people have gone virtual about how can we stay connected to other people while we're socially distanced. And so I always use Jane Dutton's work on high quality connections because I think that's so valid and important. So that talks about how we show others respect, how we can help them and task enable, so help them and support them in what their goals are, how we can build trust, which is so crucial, and have moments of play. So I would really recommend people go and check out her work on that because I think that it's so crucial for us to do whatever we can to maintain our connection through Zoom and while we're socially distanced. I think some of the elements that she teaches, particularly around building trust, that we can extend trust to others, that we be open and vulnerable, and that we uncover common ground by, instead of discussing the things that are going on today in terms of political rhetoric, what if we talked about them in terms of our strengths and our values? So instead of using catchphrases and focusing on what, maybe the media is talking about politically, what if we all discussed what we value and care about now, and maybe we could find some more common ground? And I love John Helliwell, who is a Canadian economist, who talks about social trust being the glue that holds us together, and how in America particularly it's so degraded right now. And that finding common ground and coming together to create superordinate goals so that we can create this shared identity that, okay, we're all, you might be a Democrat, you might be a Republican, we're all Americans, and what do we want that to look like? I think that creating that shared identity is a way to build trust, and the way he turns it is so beautiful. He calls it creating the bigger us. So I think we can use our strengths of perseverance and judgment and self-regulation and love and kindness and creativity and all of them, social intelligence, to really put it towards that effort as well.
Yeah, so much opportunity. So what maybe I'll pose the last question if you're okay with it. So if somebody's reaction is, oh my gosh, this has been and I think this will be people's common reaction, this is such an amazing presentation by Jenny, so many different ideas and practices and great research behind it all. Where do I start? So like, what would you suggest, for as people walk away, where should they start? What would you advise?
Well, I could say go to electionzen.com.
That's right. That's fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
It's a $10 program that is about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how much you want to go into the exercises. You'll get a workbook to be able to go and do that. But I would say otherwise to go take a look at, go revisit that values exercise that we did that aligns our strengths with our values. Because that's where personally I've found the most, I guess to use a phrase, bang for the buck, is that when I'm able to use my strength in service to things that I really love and care about and want to protect, it has been for me the best way to turn my angst into purposeful action.
Yeah, I really love that you kind of linked it to, to what matters most. What do you value most in your life? For me, I would say like my family, my kids, my wife, my work, different things. But then you brought it also into the political space of what issues do you care most about? And I know for many people in the United States, the issues have gotten squashed. If I'm being honest, they've been kind of lost in all sorts of different reasons for that. So it actually took me a little bit just when you were doing that for me to think, what are the main issues? It's gotten lost in me. And then I quickly, oh yeah, this and this and this. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great reminder for us. And then to link our character strengths with that. And then we're being, so much of what you're talking about, you didn't use the word, but it's so much is about authenticity, right, and aligning all of this together with ourselves and expressing ourselves in the world through our strengths, through our values, through those issues that matter most. So beautifully done, Jenny, and thank you so much. My tradition, this just sort of happened upon as a tradition, but I kind of like it, is to conclude with a quote, but it's a quote from the guest speaker. So a quote from you. So if we can come to a conclusion. So my quote from you, and there was many things that struck me, but this was one we didn't talk as much about. I think this is just so brilliant. It's so brilliant. It's so easy, and I hope everyone does it. Is you said, every time you hear one of these presidential candidates' names, use that as a cue to pause, a mindful pause to breathe. So to reset yourself, rather than getting so fired up by that person's name or their issues or whatever they represent and all the emotions that come with it. Reset yourself, pause, come to the present moment, come back to your strengths and values, and then move on. And what a brilliant way to just integrate seamlessly into your day and into your week. It's very different than I'm going to practice meditation for 20 minutes at the beginning of every day. It's integrating into whatever's going on in your day. So brilliant strategy. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you all for participating. Be in touch.
Okay.